No, you're not hearing things. Yes, there really is a storm brewing, both literally and figuratively. Because here we go again. I really was hoping that I did not have to address anything more in this neighborhood of what's essentially keeping us at odds with one another, black men and black women. But in light of this whole crystalline Karazin thing, and just taking issue at how everybody's just getting so wrapped up in this thing that they're not even bothering to check their facts, many of them, and just launching invective one way or the other way, and just allowing their emotions to run wild and rampant, half of which being inspired and propagated by pure emotional misinformation. But it keeps everybody hopping, and people with a poisoned heart, they're going to latch on to anything and everything that they think is going to work in their best interest to demonize the other. So it doesn't matter if it's going to be based on misinformation or not. Just go ahead and launch your invective and call somebody else out for being a traitor to the cause or whatever little spin that they want to put on. It's so that should have been sufficient enough, and the few little insights that I tried to share, I would have hoped that maybe it would lead people to tamp down on the emotionalism just a little bit, and rather than passing judgment one way or the other, try to get a sense of, do a like Joe Friday did in Dragnet, just the facts. It won't happen for us. And so as a result of that, apparently we're still going to be at odds with each other in this whole male-female dynamic in the black, um, whatever you want to call it. Some say black community, some say black populace. I don't know. I'm at the point now where I'm just about ready to just call it the black existence. Because it's like, that seems to be all we're doing. We just seem to be just going through our days with no real connections other than to backbite and backstab one another and to make excuses as to how or why certain ones don't belong, or, it's just this whole thing calling each other traitors, traitors to the race, traitors to their community, traitors to their mothers, traitors to, and it just seems like it's going to be a non-ending cycle. But I tried to trace it back in my last vidcom to explain where it all comes from. But not only where it all comes from, but also who has the ultimate power to actually effect change. Because as I've said time and again, and as I will continue to say, the ultimate fault for why the black community or the black populace or the black race or the black whatever is in the dire straits that it's in, that responsibility and accountability ultimately falls on the shoulders of black men. I've said it with no ambiguity whatsoever, and I've explained it, expressing the fact that only because black men are so wrapped up in chasing booty so damn much that they don't give thought to anything relating to, hey, it doesn't matter what anybody thinks of us. It doesn't matter what white people think of us. It doesn't matter what our own women think of us. It doesn't matter none of this stuff across the board. In fact, if we just turn off our hormones long enough, it doesn't even matter what our penis has to say about it. We as men, we have been established by default with the responsibility of making sure our community, our families, our neighborhoods, all that stuff has a solid foundation upon which to build, regardless of whoever stands in our way or whatever roadblocks get thrown in our way to trip us up. No matter who hates us, no matter who's trying to belittle us, we as men are supposed to carry that. But no other race of men in North America is susceptible to all that negativity to keep him held back and to prevent him from doing what he knows he needs to do for his community, for his families, for his image, etc. Only the black American male falls for those traps. And it's further exacerbated by the fact that I explained time and again that because the black man has not only dropped the ball, but continues to drop the ball on a collective level and does next to nothing to make sure that his community heals and that his interpersonal and familial relationships become reconciled, that the ones who have the absolute power to actually implement a move in order to get black men out of that apathy and to motivate them to do what they're supposed to be doing as men, rests right in the very lap of the black female. And when I say it rests in her lap, I mean that both literally and figuratively. Black women can make black men change their attitudes and change their behaviors within a month. And as a result of that change in them and in their priorities or their new priorities, then that would only naturally carry over into black men changing the black community or the image of black people as a whole. But as I broke it down in my last vidcom, historically, black women allowed themselves to fall for a trick, to get rope-a-doped and okey-doked into where they allowed themselves to become utterly convinced that the black man, the fathers of their children, the husbands of these wives and mothers, and by extension, even their own sons, by not having a positive male role model or father figure in the household to help train him up to be a man of character and a man of responsibility. So there, black women contributed to the utter downfall of the black society. And as that black foundation crumbled and collapsed and imploded upon itself, this made black women susceptible to swallow a whole new lie, one which stated that the black man is now and forever your enemy. And not only can you do without him, you absolutely must do without him. But don't forget to keep putting on the pretense that he's your everything in this world. Keep gassing him up and keep him thinking that he's a god, he's a king, that he's the epitome of what's needed in the black community, even as you're doing absolutely nothing to truly build him up to that status, even to the point of being a wanton and willing sperm receptacle for the absolute lowest of the low of black males in the population. Men of absolutely no character whatsoever. Angry men, destructive men, men of no substance, men without any ideas or concepts or desires for the pursuit of dreams. And yet all the while throwing your sex to these types of low lives and ne'er-do-wells, you still hold them up as the beacon of everything that's wrong with black men in America and why you must turn against black men as a collective, so that we're stuck in this perpetual no-win situation to where even the good, decent, honorable black women begin to question the whole idea. And now here is just more of the same. In doing some of my little random browsing, I came across somebody's video commentary where it was discussing actor, writer, now director Nate Parker, and brought up the story about how he was charged with rape during his college days. And of course, one of the major issues being, well, we don't care if his defense was he was cleared of all charges. Why doesn't he just come right out and say, I didn't rape that girl? Why doesn't he just come out and say that? How's this for an answer? Because, excuse my language, nobody gives a shit about anybody's protestations about their own innocence, especially in a crime like this. So in essence, what Nate Parker was trying to say was, look, it doesn't matter what I say out of my own mouth. Let me direct you to the legal outcome, which has all the force and weight of the law behind it. And I will allow them to declare unto you my guilt or my innocence. Because it would not matter if I protested 3,000, 4,000, 10,000 times over until my brown face turned white and pale as a ghost that I was innocent of this crime. Each and every time, y'all would still come out and yell at me and shout me down and saying, you're a lying MFer. You know what you did to that girl. So he pointed them to the legal outcome, probably suspecting that that would be sufficient. But see, he doesn't understand how deep the hatred of black men in this country truly is amongst black women. Because it doesn't matter whether you're a good black man, supposedly, or a bad black man, or a so-called IBM, ideal black man, which I would cast Nate Parker into that category. The handsome, well-spoken, well-mannered, upwardly mobile, talented, large earner. The kind of black men that black women always protest and proclaim there are never enough of. So this Nate Parker incident, or rehashing this old story, is just further proof of how hated we are as a group, as black men. And again, it doesn't even matter if we stand outside of that realm of the no good black men who end up getting praised and promoted and bigged up by charlatan frauds such as Deborah Cooper, who tried to make excuses as to why thugs tend to get more tail than the so-called good black men or the decent, honorable black men, using it as a shaming tactic to call black men of character lames, even going so far to tell young black women, go out and get you a thug. Go out and have your fun with him. Get all the thug dick that you can get. Rather than trying to explain to them, look, there's a better option. You want to look toward the long run. Don't do anything that's going to mess up your value in the eyes and sight of the decent quality black men that you're going to end up wanting later down in life, who will then wind up rejecting you because by that time they will have moved on and viewed you as damaged goods, so that when you can't snag the good black man that you claim to want after you've been all spent and essentially tossed like a used menstrual rag, well, that just leads into more hatred of the black male, doesn't it? So as in the case of Nate Parker, regardless of whether he did anything right, wrong, or indifferent, he's automatically suspect. But all the more so because he ended up being found in a position that all too often too many young males, especially of college age, run a terrible risk of finding themselves in, where he had to deal with a young girl that he was involved with, pulling out the rape card and trying to absolve herself of any and all responsibility for her own actions in somebody's bedroom. So when Mr. Parker appealed to the court system and said, look at the outcome there, it doesn't matter what I say I did or didn't do. It doesn't matter that the accuser in this case ended up murking her own self, supposedly for the stress and anxiety that she was carrying around for her life, which could have been for any reason. But ultimately, I am not responsible for her actions. But black women want to hate black men so much that rather than giving this man the benefit of the doubt and saying, well, okay, the legal system cleared you, so despite what our own personal feelings may have been about how you ended up in that situation or whether it was an honorable or noble thing that you did or didn't do, we'll accept that no crime was committed or that there was no substantiating evidence that would, beyond a reasonable doubt, lead to such a conclusion. But you're doing something noble since then. You've been really going out there and you've been trying to show just what it is that black men are truly capable of doing and how we can do something positive for the black man's image and whatever. And since we're always on this thing about showing pride in our race and appealing back to the struggles that we had to go through in order to get ourselves up to the top or to keep climbing closer to the top, always appealing to the examples of our history. And brother, you picked one of the most powerful images of the black community, a historical figure that could really motivate us and ramp us up and to really give us back a sense of race pride and to get us thinking again about what we can do to be a strong collective community and use that as added fuel to motivate us to overcome the difficulties and all the little roadblocks that are still in our way. You know, anything that gives us that little extra boost to say that we are going to honor the sacrifices of our history past so that we make sure that their sacrifices were not in vain, and that at the end of the day, it was all worth it because riding that wave helped push us to the pinnacle of our own excellence. But that's not what these black cells did or are doing. Rather than trying to envision a collective positive outcome as a result of somebody who wanted to go back and tell a proper Nat Turner story, to undo the damage of that William Styron homosexual, corrupted, and infuriating work of fiction, but also to reclaim the title of one of the most hateful, the most shockingly disturbing of any film ever produced in the United States, The Birth of a Nation, so that not only does he reclaim Nat Turner for us, but he also usurps the title of the most vile, vicious, racially insensitive movie ever to be produced in this country. So he scores a double coup. But rather than seeing that as a victory, these wenches go around proclaiming that we as black women need to boycott Nate Parker's Birth of a Nation because we don't want to show that we are in support of a rapist. And we don't care if he was cleared of those charges or not. He's not cleared in our mind, because he not one time said he didn't do it, he just told us to look at the legal outcome, and because we're convinced that black men are rapists anyway. So we get actual comments such as this, quote, "I would never support black men, ever. What they need now is for black women to turn our backs on them. They are an embarrassment of epic proportions," unquote. And here's another one that says, quote, "Sadly, they are truly an embarrassment. Also, the black women who still support this type of fuckery are an embarrassment too," unquote. Quote, "It boggles the mind that these women hate themselves so much. I tend to think it is because of ignorance, but I really hope that Brooklyn Blues and other savvy, crafty black women's posts reach them," unquote. And of course, we all know, pretty much, that Brooklyn Blue is Crystalline Carrison's #1 scissor sister when it comes to hating and despising and dumping on black men. Or how about this bit of compassionate insight? Quote, "Black men defend Nate Parker because many of them are guilty of the same behavior. If Nate Parker gets a pass, so do they." Close quote. These next two come from a very pretty black woman, according to the avatar, assuming that that's who's posting these comments. But despite her physical appearance, what do the next two quotes say about the ugliness inside? Quote, "Is there a petition or anything like that we can sign?" Unquote. And this, quote, "This is sick, and all black men can do is say how the white man is worse, but never say how they themselves are better. From now on, I won't be responding to these subhuman shit stains, or the women who express empathy for them and coddle them," unquote. So not only does she shove black men in front of the train, but any black woman who has the capacity to show any sort of compassion or support for black men gets likewise so shoved. So you better join the anti-black male sisterhood, or else. And what was the easiest solution to all of this? Just go back and read the released telephone transcript where during the investigation, this woman, this so-called victim, likely under the instructions of the police department who were conducting the investigations, had decided to lay a trap for Nate Parker by attempting to get him to confess in a secretly recorded phone call that he clearly was not aware of, so that he could implicate himself. And yet, if anyone even bothered to review said released transcripts, there was absolutely no way possible that anyone could walk away from reading that Nate Parker had taken any sort of unjustifiable advantage of this woman without her own willingness and her consent. But we know the trick these feminized women like to play. Whenever it's like, "Well, I was drunk, I didn't have all my capacities, and you shouldn't have taken it." It's like, how I was drunk too. So what? If we're going to use that as an excuse, then maybe I ought to take you to court and say that you raped me. But even then, he expressed that he had enough cognitive abilities about him at that particular meeting that he was still able to describe what happened, when it happened, what led up to it, who participated, and, nail in the coffin, how she herself eagerly responded to all of the attention. Oops. But still, that's not enough to satisfy these hateful, bitter, shrieking black women from attacking this man and attempting to disrupt and destroy his livelihood. So even with all that, I still had difficulty understanding where such bitter, vitriolic hatred spews forth from. And then I saw this. And all of my questions were answered. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Oh, it gave rise to 1,000 words, all right, and then some. Because even though these black women hate and despise black men, how dare you find your happiness and your acceptance in the arms of someone other than a black woman? And yet, don't you dare say shit to us when we decide to shove you so hard in front of the train that we throw white men and swirling in front of your face, and dare you to get upset with us about being quote-unquote race traitors. What is that saying? There's no honor among thieves. So what's good enough for me as a black woman is not good enough for you as a black man, even though we're both equally culpable in quote unquote betraying the race. And you want to say somebody like myself is a race traitor because we refuse to subject ourselves to all of this poisonous, infantile, backbiting behavior? All the black firster types and other pretentious charlatans want to get upset and up in arms when a decent, respectable black man refuses to come running to the defense like a shining knight of one of these bitter, nasty, vitriolic, hate-filled black women, or expect me to yield and kowtow and kiss the feet of black women's outer beauty when inside they're full of corpses and maggots and all sorts of putrid rot. There is a concept that comes into play here, black men, and I'm especially talking to you decent, honorable, respectable, well-rounded black men of character who are even thinking about falling into this painful and damaging trap. And it goes something like this. Don't go where you clearly are not wanted. Black women made their decision about how important and valuable we were in their lives back in the late 60s and early 70s. And since then, we have continued to become devalued in their eyes. So if you decent, honorable, hardworking black men have this desire and this urge to be recognized for your true value, then find someone who will see that value in you and appreciate it. And throw the slop to the hogs. And stop trying to throw yourselves as pearls before swine. End of line.